The New York Rangers and Gerard Gallant part ways. And in other words, Gerard Gallant was fired. So after 2 seasons, Gallant is out. And this is not really, it's not that much of a surprise, but it's more to do than just Gallant. You know, getting rid of him, I'm not surprised by it. But this was a coach that really accomplished a lot for this team. Year 1, an 110-point season, Rangers lose in the conference finals versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Then this past season that just ended, 107-point season, the Rangers lose in 7 in the first round of the New Jersey Devils and kind of went out with a whimper. But with Gallant, it's interesting, and I said this when he was hired, that he doesn't really – the shelf life is certainly very short for Gerard Gallant. He really has had – I mean, more so with Vegas, right? Vegas is the better comparison, where in their first year of existence, 109-point season, and he gets them to the Cup final. Second year, they make the playoffs. It was definitely worse, 93 points, but they made it. And this was the controversial one where they lost to the Sharks, where I believe they had a 3-1 series lead. And that was, of course, Game 7, where Cody Eakin is called for that 5-minute major on Joe Pavelski, and the Golden Knights blow a third-period lead against the Sharks, and then future Ranger Barclay Goodrow actually scores the game-winning goal in overtime for the Sharks in 2019 to knock out the Golden Knights. Then the next year, before it even gets to the point of, so COVID happens in the 1920 season, but Gallant is out even before it gets to that point. And they were 24-19-6. Long story short, Gallant, it was a surprise at the time that he got let go. Now, he was out for the remainder of that year as coach. He also did not coach in the 2021 season. Then the Rangers hire him, and he replaces David Quinn. And he really, last year, as frustrating as it got by the end, and by the end, I was critical of Gallant, in that Lightning series. I mean, the healthy scratch of the Game 6 management was crazy, where he healthy scratches Capo Caco. He gets Dryden Hunt in the lineup. And if you remember, Ryan Strome was hurt. Ryan Strome wasn't even healthy by Game 6. It just made no sense. None of it made any sense. But that's a very small part. I'll talk about the bigger issue with Gallant. But I go back to his time with the Florida Panthers. Now, 2015, not a terrible season, but they missed the playoffs, a 91-point season. Then in 2016, the first time the Panthers had made the playoffs in a long, long time. I think it might have been a 16-year drought broken. And Gallant leads the Panthers to the playoffs. They win the Atlantic Division, and they lose in the first round to the Islanders in a close series. And then 22 games into the next season, fired. So there's something there, whether it be just him not quite seeing eye to eye with the general manager, or maybe it's a player thing. It's hard to say, but Gallant, while very successful, the stays are, his stints are short. And I'll tell you first why Gallant, why this is, I don't know if deserved is the right word, but why I'm not surprised. And 2 years in a row, I made a big deal about this. You cannot take a 2-0 lead twice and get knocked out. And both times they almost lost 4 straight. They did lose 4 straight to Tampa. Against the Devils, they did win Game 6, but went out in such a weak way. And with Gallant, where are the tactical adjustments, right? That's what I'm wondering. I think he's a good motivator, although obviously that kind of fell off for sure. But I think that Gallant did a great job in 2022. I know that Igor Shesterkin was unbelievable, and a lot of credit goes there. But what Gallant did, really, he turned this team around. From Quinn to Gallant, they went from a team that was losing all the close games to winning all the close games. What they did last year was overachievement, quite frankly. Even though they came so close to going even further, and it's frustrating that it fell off, he did a great job, and I think that he was really getting through to the players. The same players that really had been there with David Quinn for the most part. Obviously, they brought in Goodrow, they brought in Ryan Reeves, there were some other guys that came in, but it was pretty much the same crew that they had. And what sucks is, once Tampa Bay kind of figured the Rangers out, and in part the Rangers, they definitely ran out of gas, but Gallant was unable to change the flow of the series. And I found that to happen again in the Devils series, where it starts out good, and then Lindy Ruff makes adjustments, and Gallant, nothing's happening. He's not an X's and O's coach. I want the next Ranger coach to have an actual structure. with Gallant, I'm not sure what it was. Now, to be fair, again, 2022 specifically, he did a really nice job where this team like maybe had one 3-game losing streak over the course of the season. I'm not going to count the end where the Rangers' spot was already determined. They had one 3-game losing streak last year, and within that, there might have been 1 or 2 overtime or shootout points. Like, they were super consistent, and they were just so clutch. Not to say that the clutchness necessarily went away. They were generally a good third-period team, but with Gallant, again, lack of adjustments. And I think ultimately as well, I don't think you saw eye to eye with Chris Drury. There was reports that came out that after Game 4 there was a yelling match, and I'm sure that was just one thing, right? I'm sure there were other things behind closed doors. But according to Molly Walker, for the player exit interviews, I don't think that Gallant, nothing changed their mind. If they felt like they wanted to get rid of Gallant, the exit interviews certainly didn't change that, and I think that's more to do with it than them wanting to keep him, and then player exit interviews telling them, okay, no, we need to get rid of him. Whereas with Tortorella in 2013, I think he was going to stay on, and then I do think that they changed course after hearing the players. Whereas here, I think they always kind of did want to get rid of him, and nothing changed their mind after what they heard from the players. So there's a lot that goes into this. They termed it as mutually agreeing to part ways. He really got fired is what happened. And I think that Gerard Gallant will be hired very quickly. It's crazy. The 3 Jack Adams finalists from 2022 all gone from their teams. Gallant, Sutter just got fired for the Flames, and then Andrew Brunette, who it was a unique situation where he took over, and we'll talk about Brunette and Joel Quenneville. He takes over for Joel Quenneville after he was fired, and it was an interim tag. And now Andrew Brunette is the assistant coach with the Devils, behind Lindy Ruff. So it's just crazy how that happens sometimes. But Gerard Gallant is gone. I agree with the move, but there is a lot more that needs to be done here. A lot more needs to be done, and I don't know if they can. That's why it was easier to let him go, because as much as I want to get rid of, let's say, an Artemi Panarin, I don't know if you can do it. I don't even know if you can do it. I think there's probably too many obstacles to get there. And trading Barclay Goodrow, for example, if they do that, that is not a significant move, right? So in terms of they might still do that. I wouldn't be surprised if they still do that, but I think that with firing Gallant, it just sort of reiterates to me that if you want, and again, I keep on using Panarin as the example, if you want him gone, I don't think that it's even realistic. And if, let's say, you did somehow trade Lafreniere, which, as disappointed as I am with him, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. But even if you did do that, that's still not a significant move. I mean, it is because he was a first overall pick, but I'm talking about the core. I'm talking about Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, Trouba, Trocheck is now kind of part of that core. Of course, Fox. There's others as well, right? And so I don't see that changing. And so Gallant is kind of the most significant change you can make. And look, it was unacceptable. What happened against the Devils was unacceptable, and it's the way they went out that was awful. But a lot of that, and more of it, goes to the players. Gallant couldn't get through to them, just like David Quinn couldn't really get through to them. And that's where it's on them. This has got to be a wake-up call for them. And so I hope that they bring in someone that's really going to, get through to them. And Gallant kind of did, but then it wore off. Whoever this next coach is, I hope, gets through to them and it stays. Let's now talk about potential coaching candidates for the Rangers. And this could go a number of different ways. The way I see it, there's not one obvious choice. Now, Joel Quenneville is the name that's coming up. And look, I know his accomplishments, but what he did it's just unacceptable. Where, as the Chicago Blackhawks head coach, in their heyday of winning, this was early 2010s, Kyle Beach, I believe that was his name, who ended up actually being on the Rangers for in their system for a brief time. Beach, who came out. What was the situation with Beach? No, I'm sorry, that's not even true. I'm not even going to go there. Actually, no. Beach was basically abused by one of the Blackhawks trainers. Right? I'm not going to get into the details of it, but that's, the gist of it, right? And they basically swept that under the rug. It was brought to Quenneville's attention. This was an absolutely disgusting move. And he just basically tried to let this, he wanted this to go away. There was no discipline. The player was not supported in Beach. And Quenneville, ultimately this came out eventually, and Quenneville with the Florida Panthers last year was let go and is on a list of, he needs to be let back in. Long story short, this is a messy situation, but I do think that there is a chance that this happens. But I would not really support that move. And not for nothing anyway, I'm not even sure if that is the right move to make. Right? I mean, just forgetting about, to me, it's just, yes, Quenneville is one of the most successful coaches. He doesn't have Patrick Kane in his prime. He doesn't have Jonathan Taves. He doesn't have Duncan Keith. Quenneville is a part of that equation, of course. He is as much a reason why they won as the players. But look, he's not walking into that situation here. I just don't think it's worth it. But I do also think if I'm looking at, if there were a Vegas odds, I think Quenneville might be the front runner, but it's not obvious. Whereas last time when Quinn got fired, consensus was Gerard Gallant was kind of, among Ranger fans, Gallant was the guy that we all wanted. This year it's a mix. Let's talk about some other candidates. Let's stay within the NHL. There's a couple of coaches that just got fired. And again, I don't know if they'll be hired, but we'll bring them up. Peter Laviolette, who was just fired by the Capitals, who, he's been a good NHL coach in the last 20 years. Started with the Islanders, won a cup with the Hurricanes, had some success with the Flyers, had some success with the Predators. But, with the Caps, kind of dropped off a bit. But still, this is a coach, he can get you to the playoffs. There's certainly worse candidates. I don't think it's going to happen. Daryl Sutter, who was just fired by Calgary. The only thing that's appealing about him is I kind of really want these players to be shaken up. Apparently players wanted out of Calgary. I kind of want Artemi Panarin out of New York. So Sutter, the only interest there is that I think that he can really kind of shake these players, but I don't think that's the way he should go either. I just think that time has kind of passed him by a little bit. I want someone with a structure that's going to work, right? I want someone with a plan and a system that is wow, this is New York Ranger hockey. Look, with John Tortorella, you knew what it was. Were there flaws to the system? Yes, but you knew what they were. They were dubbed the black and blue shirts. I want the Rangers to have an identity, and I want them to play like a team. So those are a couple of candidates. Another guy that's still employed, Mike Sullivan with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like I said, he's still employed. So I think there could be some interest there if he frees up. But again, with him, look, we saw it last year with the Penguins, whether it was the core or whatnot, they fell off. I mean, and again, he won Stanley Cups with them in 16 and 17, but they kind of dropped off recently. So I don't know if I want to go in that direction. There's also Chris Knobloch, who we saw briefly. He is the Hartford Wolfpack head coach, and we saw him take, when David Quinn was out with COVID, Knobloch came in, the Rangers had that. What was it? Was it 9-0? I think it might have been 9. It was crazy. It was either 7-0. I think it might have been even 9-0, where Zibanejad went nuts, and Knobloch coached a few games there. And I think he also coached last year when I think Gallant had COVID, had a COVID situation in 2022. So we see Knobloch. It's an interesting thought. It's with definite risk, but look, it's an internal option. Here's the key. You really want to unlock Lafreniere and Kakko. And maybe that's not possible, but that's got to be key with whoever you bring in, is they have to bring the best out of the young kids. Because we have not seen that to this point, whether it be Quinn or Gallant. And Gallant was more of a veterans coach. To me, if I'm, Panarin or Kreider or Zibanejad in those exit interviews, I'm not having much of a problem with Gallant. To me, it would be more of the kids, if anything. But, who knows how that went down. Maybe we'll find out at some point. I brought up Andrew Brunette before. That would be interesting. But I don't know how realistic that is. He's currently the assistant coach with the Devils. People like to bring up Mark Messier. I don't think that they go there. It'll probably always get brought up when there's a Ranger head coaching vacancy. I just don't think that that's a wise thing to do. But I think those are sort of the main ones. Bruce Boudreau as well, who was kind of unfairly let go by the Vancouver Canucks, right? I mean, that could be something. I don't think Patrick Waugh makes any sense, but of course there's ties with Chris Drury back to his days with the Colorado Avalanche. Bob Hartley, who and I guess we haven't seen him for a while. He was the head coach when Chris Drury was in Colorado. So, again, there's different options to be had here. Nothing is obvious. Again, it feels like Quenneville is the head. Is the candidate, the leading candidate at this point. And I just think that's not a direction that I would want to go in. I think that's a PR nightmare. And I hope that, not cooler heads, but be wise here. That's not worth the trouble. It's just not. It just simply, for many reasons, I wouldn't go in that direction, but they might. So we'll see what happens. But after 2 seasons, Gerard Gallant is out. And those will be some tough shoes to fill. He was successful. It wasn't as if this was a total failure by any means, but ultimately it ran its course. And so now Gerard Gallant will, look elsewhere, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is hired in somewhat short order. He will be one of the top candidates out there, but for the Rangers, they had to go in a different direction, and this hopefully will be the first of many changes that happens, because it's not just on Gerard Gallant. Even though I agree with it, the main problem is with the core of the team. And for Chris Drury, if this head coach doesn't go right, he could be next. This is a big hire for Chris Drury. If this coach does not succeed, Chris Drury could be looking at having the same fate as Gerard Gallant. So this is a big hire for him. And we will talk about it when the Rangers hire the next head coach. Again, be much appreciated to please subscribe below. We will continue to discuss this evolving situation, and I hope the Rangers are thorough with this. There's no rush for this head coaching search. Get it right. Get this right and turn this around.